Right folks, this is my first ever YouTube video. Apologies if it's a bit rubbish. As I say, it's my first ever one. What I'm going to show you today is how to replace, remove, change, whatever you want to call it, the alternator or stator on a 2011 Triumph Street Triple R. I've actually already replaced mine with a new one, but in doing so, managed to crack the engine casing. I don't know if you can see. Previous owner must have dropped it at some point, unbeknownst to me. When I was getting that cover back on, I tapped it on gently with a mallet. You know, fixed it all, fitted it all up. Went out for a ride that day. When I got back, I noticed my engine cover was seeping a little bit of oil. It turns out the little crack that had been repaired, I must have hit that with the mallet when I fixed it back on. So all that work that I did, I've now got to undo, which means taking off the old cover. I bought a new one from Triumph, 110 quid, ouch. A new gasket and a new little, I don't know if you can see in there, but that bolt there, it has a little copper crush washer. I think that's about 60p, you might as well replace that as well. So what I'm going to show you to do today, step by step, is how to take everything off, disconnect all the alternator, refit the new alternator, and put it all back together. Right folks, this is everything that you're going to need. So one trusty assistant, he's not very happy being on camera, paddock stand, 5mm Allen key, socket set, 8mm spanner, I think a T40, I think it's a Torx head Allen key, not quite sure what it is. Dust sheet so you don't get any drips of oil on your garage floor, get your wife annoyed at you. Obviously a bowl to catch it in, knee if you've got a cushion if you've got aging knees like I have, and a skirting board, a piece of skirting board, and that'll become apparent in a minute why you need a piece of skirting board. Most important tool you're going to need today, a cup of tea. Probably going to take you about, I don't know, hour and a half, depends how capable you are. Okay, so first step is to just remove your petrol tank, so be really careful. This is where you need your 5mm Allen key. 2 bolts, remove them, don't drop any washers, and all I'm going to do is undo these and just prop the tank up. I'm not going to actually remove it, I'm just going to lift it up so you can get access to a couple of connectors you need to disconnect underneath. Washers. And this is where the all important piece of skating board comes in. Carefully lift your tank, don't let them 2 tabs on your tank catch your frame because you'll be annoyed if you scratch it. There you go. So all I've done is just wedge my tank up. Now down here, there's two connections I need to disconnect. First one to my stator. Push that plug in. That one pops out. That's one. And there's another smaller one. If you can get in there, just down here. Again, a little bit fiddly. You need ladies' hands like me. A little tab. Pop in, it should come out like that. So that's all it is. That's the connection to the stator, the alternator, disconnected from the rest of the bike. Okay, so next steps are I need to remove heel plate with the T40 Torx head Allen key. That will allow me access to gear selector rod. I'm going to need 8mm ring spanner, ratchet spanner to take that off, and there's a little clip down here, I'll show you how to do that, take that off. You need to take the front sprocket cover off. The reason you need to take all that off is that will give you access to, I don't know if you can see, some of it is covered up, the alternator cover itself, and that's held on by 8mm bolts. So I'm just going to take all that off, Right, so behind that heel plate is the end of the gear selector rod. There's a little, you see that little metal clip there. Just push that over with your nail, and you should just carefully pull it out. Just a little clip like that. Don't lose it. That should allow you to then just push the connector off. You notice all your gear lever drops down. I've then just got to undo this 8mm bolt. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. If you're worried about not getting your gear selector back in the right place, like I was first time I did this job, I'll show you. On the end of the spline, let me camera focus, there's a little tiny dot, can you see? And you just line up the groove there with that little tiny dot there, so you know where you've got your gear selector in exactly the same place. So show you that again, don't lose the bolt. That should just slide off, and then that allows you, again, carefully, don't scratch your frame, take your gear selector rod out. It might be an idea now, just to show you, you'll probably not be able to see, but in the end of there, there's a little hole, you can just see it there, look, for you to slide. It goes through on both sides. Slide the metal pin back in, just so you don't lose it, that's all. Actually it goes that way, doesn't it? Slide it in there, that's it. You'll not lose that now. Get it in one-handed. Assistant, hold my phone. See how it just slides straight through and just clips in place. And that's that little metal bit that stops the ball coming off the end of the gear selector. So that's that, don't lose that. Let's see. Don't lose your bolt. Have it in. I like to put things back together just for safekeeping. Next job now is front sprocket cover. There's just 3 8mm bolts. Very straightforward to undo. One at the top, 2 underneath. When I took this off first time, I used it as an opportunity to give it a clean. Quite a lot of chain lube on, and it was absolutely shitted up and full of flung off chain lube and road gunk. Absolutely disgusting. So like I said, 2 at the bottom, 1 at the top. Kind of straightforward. That just comes off. These breather hoses sit in that little groove there, so you just have to remember that when you put it all back on. Obviously you don't want them get trapped in your chain. Okay, put that to one side. So the next job now is simply to remove the cover. Before you do that, just pull your alternator wiring through carefully. You have to just fiddle the connectors through. They will go. Just a little bit fiddly, that's all. We usually get caught up on something. So that's it now, you can see that's completely disconnected. This is where you need your bowl. There will be a tiny little bit of oil that just drips out. If you're taking it off, just loosen everything, don't go straight in gung-ho, and try and undo your bolts in a star opposite pattern. So you do top right, bottom left, bottom right, top left, like that. It just removes pressure on your cover in an even order. And again, when you're tightening it all back up, I'd put it all back on like that. So you know, you tighten top left and then tighten bottom right once you've got it loose. Should be fine, not to worry about it then. Right, I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. So obviously just taking all these bolts off one at a time. What I like to do, it's a bit funny, I like bolts to go back in exactly the same place. Just get a piece of cardboard, Ed China taught me this off wheelie dealers. As you take your bolts off, just push them through a piece of card so you know exactly where they go, which bolt goes in which hole. I know it's probably a bit ridiculous, they should all be exactly the same. Like I say, I'm just a bit anal. I like things to go back where they came from.
Yeah.
Okay, just one thing to know, these two bolts on the bottom here, just beware that that holds a little bracket that holds that hose in place. I forgot and dropped it in my nice oily bowl. Yeah, so it's just to make you aware there's a little bracket held on with them bolts as well. So last bolt, as I mentioned, this one's got a copper crush washer on it. On the alternator cover itself, you can see that the actual paint is not on that one, so you know which hole to put it on when you're replacing it. Throw that away. I've got a new crush washer, but you have to remember which bolt it goes on. So that's all my bolts. I'm just going to put them somewhere safe so dog don't pinch them. Right, so all your bolts are free. What you should be able to do now is just take that cover off. You might want to just give it a bit of a rubber mallet tap. If it's been on for a while, probably one that's truly stuck to your gasket. One thing to know is this will be quite difficult to pull off. Inside there obviously there's magnets, and then magnets is going to be what's holding that cover on. Well, it won't be holding the cover on, it'll be holding the old alternator on itself. So I'm just going to pull that off now. And this is where you probably get a little bit of oil coming out. Be careful, it should just wriggle off. See it coming free. A couple of pegs as well. Try and keep everything nice and level. You don't want anything to drop. Oh, you can see a little bit of oil coming out there now. As I said, that's to be expected. Right, here it comes. Just watch your fingers. Oh. Right. That should not be like that. That's the reason I put a new one on. Oh, word, what's happened here? Okay, that's a bigger problem. I don't know if you noticed when I pulled that cover off then, all this gear came out. There should be a peg in there. And that gear sits on there and on there. So, just need to pop that back in. Like so. That all kind of lines up like that. This is one of the pegs that I'm talking about. It might pop out on mine. If you just look down here, it actually stops in the alternator cover. I need to get all the gasket off. That was a brand new gasket. If you're cleaning all that up, don't use anything metal. Use a plastic scraper if you can. You don't want to damage this. Obviously don't care because I'm putting a new one of these on. If you look inside here, this is a brand new alternator that's lasted for one ride. When I tested all my electrics with a multimeter, it was showing that this was short circuiting. That's a brand new one. That was 135 quid. As I say, it's lasted one ride, so there's obviously another issue somewhere else. The only other place it can be is the regulator rectifier, which is an absolute git to get to. It's right behind the shocker there. They're about 100 quid as well. So I need to get my good lady wife to allow me to spend another couple £100, another £100 odd on that, and another £100 odd on that. She's not going to be very happy, is she? Neither am I.
No, she's not.
Right, folks, that was the old alternator that I took off. It should be that colour all the way around. Nice brand new colour. I noticed after testing it was short circuiting, and upon taking the cover off discovered it was fried. So I bought myself a nice brand new one. As you can see, that's had it after one ride. So a little bit miffed. Mentioned earlier this is going to be first video. Looks like I'll be doing another video on how to remove and replace the regulator rectifier once I've managed to talk the wife round yeah, got over the fact that that's 135 quid wasted. So it's going to be 135 quid for this. Just cost me 110 for one of these, 15 for a gasket. It's going to be about 100 quid or so for the regulator rectifier. What's more annoying is it's a nice dry day today, no chance for a ride. But anyway, so I'm just going to show you now how to remove the stator from the cover. So first off, this rubber bung just pops out like that. This is a 4mm bolt that holds this little bracket on here. I had previously put a tiny little bit of blue thread lock on. Obviously didn't want these bolts coming off if I'd not tightened them up properly. There are torque settings in your Haynes manual. I think it's somewhat low, like 5 Newton meters or 8 Newton meters. My torque range starts at 28. Obviously, important, keep your eye on what you're doing. That just bounced halfway across my garage floor, covered in cobwebs and shit now. So that bolt comes out there, and there's a cover. I don't know if you can see, I'll get my light in there. There's a wire, this wire, it goes down like that. You need to make sure when you're refitting it all that these wires are all pop back in the right place. There's a little channel for the wire to sit in. You don't want that to be travelled up with your rotor. That will be nasty. Okay, so that's the cover took off. I'll do this one here. Again, a little tiny bit of thread lock. Just be careful, it is aluminium, not too much. That's the pickup. I'm not too worried about damaging this cover, obviously, because I've bought a new one. That's that free. Then there's just these 3 bolts that you need to undo here. This is back to the 5mm one. Undo them. It should just come out. It should just lift out. Quite long bolts. Obviously when you're putting them back, I'd make sure you get any thread lock cleaned off before you put them back, and then that should just lift out. So that's it now, that's all completely away. Absolutely burnt to hell. It was like that when I got it. Nice brand new copper, and then ended up looking like that after a day's riding. Really pissed off, never mind. Oh, and you also got that out. That was holding some of the wiring, the windings on. Ziplock, that's knackered as well. Inside here, obviously if you're putting it all back on, give it a good clean out. That's your actual part number from Triumph if you need to order a new alternator cover 126046. That's for 2011. I think 2013 onwards they were slightly different. And again, if you're fitting it, when you're refitting this, you need to get all this old gasket off. You need a plastic scraper. When I did this the first time round, getting all this gasket off was actually the longest process, the longest part of the entire job. It took me a couple of hours to get this off properly. I used a combination, a little plastic scraper, a little plastic tyre lever that I had for my mountain bike, and that were a bit too soft. I raided the kitchen and got a couple of those little yellow sponges with the green scouring pad. Again, that pissed our lass off. I used the last one. But it did it, and it's got to be all nice and clean and dry, no oil residue when you're putting your new gasket back on. Obviously when I've sorted out my new stator and reg rec, I'll show you how to do that.